This episode is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the #1 tool for all podcasters. You can record high-fidelity audio between remote locations and get studio-quality sound. Go to Zencastr.com and use coupon code THATENTERTAINS for 20% off for 3 months or 20% off an annual plan.
This is a That's Entertainment podcast.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. That was awesome. You guys are awesome.
No,
You're awesome. You are awesome.
sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Hey there, welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And, whoo boy, am I, I guess I'm back to being rested, but I'm still kind of mentally exhausted from the festival. I did not get things with Everything is Awesome and the rest of the That's Entertainment Podcast Network caught up like I wanted to before the festival started. That's all right. I started putting some motions in, and by the end of February, I was going to just have everything post this week, but I decided against it. I decided to spread it out. I don't want to bombard everybody with podcasts. So until we're caught up, we're going to be releasing 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, on the Everything is Awesome feed. And then we're going to be releasing 2 days a week on other feeds like the Victims and Villains feed, the After Party of One podcast feed, and anything else that we need to catch up on. We'll be releasing on a 1 to 2 day a week schedule until we're all caught up. That also includes our backlog for the Zomcast. I'm going to get back to doing that. We got our first season worth of podcasts from way back in the day, like 2010, I believe. We got those episodes up and in the backlog. We're going to go back into our seasons 2, 3, 4, and whatever else we have. We probably have about 60 episodes in between what we posted and in the past and the present to get us caught up, and then we'll go from there to see what we're going to do with the future of the Zomcast. But today, through timey-wimey stuff, we're still, I believe, in December with this interview. But for the purposes of what we're going to talk about in this pre-intro, we're going to talk about what Kev knows. And I want to shout out our guest this week, Chuck. I'm going to hope that I get this last name pronounced correctly. Staton. Chuck. What a great interview. You're going to listen to this great conversation. He has some great stories. We talk about his work in the new media world and what it's like to be like hustling and doing this full time and whatnot now. I do need to apologize to both you and Chuck, though. Something happened with our Zencastr recording where his side of the conversation cut off 20 to 30 minutes, the last 20 to 30 minutes. So I believe when you hear the end of this, you're going to hear us trying to wrap up, and it will actually probably wrap up. Just know that there was another 20 to 30 minutes of the conversation that we unfortunately lost due to the Zencastr recording. I don't know what happened. We were unable to recover his last 30 minutes of his side of the conversation, but what a great conversation and whatnot. And we missed a lot of things that he was doing that he wanted to promote. We ended up missing the boat on. So I'll be sure to retweet anything that he has going on so that whenever he has stuff to promote, we're actually promoting it, and we'll make sure to drop it in some show notes and pre-intros and post-intros and whatnot. I don't want to keep you guys here any longer. Make sure you check out Chuck on Twitter at Discount Chuck. And of course, you can find him on his podcast, chuckandbradpodcast.com. His band is the Senior Discount. The chuckandbradpodcast.com website seems to be the central location for everything that Chuck does. We'll be back on the other end to chat a little bit more. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to Everything is Awesome right here on awesomepodcast.com. And of course, we are part of the That's Entertainment Podcast Network on thatentertains.com. So, Chuck, first of all, thank you for being on the show and being flexible. I want to say this has got to be like close to 4 months of trying to book now.
Yeah. I think we talked. I mean, my band's album came out on July 13th. So that's probably when we first talked.
And your album dropped July 13th? That's what a crazy world we live in. That's my birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's fun, man. That's
probably
awesome.
One of the reasons why like things were hectic around that time.
No, I hear you. Plus, like with everything, you have to do stuff early. It's not like we were going to record on that day anyway.
And like before that, I want to say this year the Philadelphia Podcast Festival was. Let's see, Podcast Movement was in July. So I believe we had the Philadelphia Podcast Festival in June. So like right around when we started talking, I was in the middle of like interviewing as many Philadelphia podcasters as I could. So like it was crazy hectic on my side.
Yeah.
And then like
the
more recent stuff is just like me being like depressed and like ignoring all emails and then going back and seeing one or two missed emails from you and saying, oh God, I'm such a shit. The end of the year is always, for the last 2 years has been a pretty tough time where 2 years ago, in October of 2016, my uncle was in the process of going through treatments for his cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when things like turned for the worst. And like by mid-month, end of the month, we kind of knew that, it was only a matter of days to maybe a week or so. And then we ended up losing him on November 6th, 2016.
Damn, I'm sorry, man.
So, I'm just going to make this, I swear to God that we usually talk about fun stuff on the show and we will get to that at some point. And honestly, this part might get cut out of the show because it actually, because the Timey Wimey stuff, I haven't announced it on the show yet, but I'm not sure if it will be announced before this episode goes up. But I told you in an email that I had a family emergency with my father, and a week after the anniversary of my uncle's passing, he was diagnosed with cancer, and like a very aggressive form of it that. In a couple days removed from it, like it seems like there's a lot that can be, it's never going away, but there's a lot that can be done to treat it, and manage it and have a long, happy life. But
right.
The initial day of hearing like, hey, you have this very aggressive stage 4 cancer, is like, I'm sure for him, like, 10 times worse than what happened when I got the phone call. So like, before that, like it's just like, all right, October I know is the month that I'm going to start getting into my depression because that's when things went south. And my uncle was more of like an older brother to me. Like he was only 16 years older than me. So, like he's the reason I got into Kevin Smith and I like Star Wars and stuff. And like he's my entryway to a lot of that stuff. And then his birthday is about a month and a half after the anniversary of his passing. It's like December 20th, which is then, of course, we have Thanksgiving, which was a big holiday that him and I always really enjoyed. And we played games at whenever we were, as we got older, we had, our own kids and stuff, and we weren't able to hang out and play games as much, but we would just hang out on Thanksgiving and play card games and stuff. And same thing with like his birthday and Christmas, that all happens all in the same, last 2 to 3 months of the year. So I know that's my least productive time and whatnot. Yeah. So, so thank you. The point is thank you for being you being the persistent one and following up over and over again to make this thing happen because I am a shit.
Oh man, no, I feel bad for even emailing you about it.
No. I'm glad you did because because I'm so far behind. So like another thing that happens usually in the month of October is I fall behind on actually posting episodes. So like there's maybe 4 or 5 episodes that I actually have to edit and get out there to the world in a timely fashion. And I haven't recorded probably since mid-October, which for me is to go without talking to someone that's not like immediate family and be able to talk about just stupid crap for an hour or so at a time. Yeah. That's a long time. Yeah. So like this is hopefully like the fire that I need, the relighting of the fire that I need to kind of.
Oh, good. Oh, I love this kind of responsibility.
Yeah. So you are responsible, hopefully, for everything is awesome coming back, rising from the ashes of a phoenix.
Well, I don't want to beat my own horn, but like I'm pretty good at having fun and interesting conversations with people. I think that's one of the things I'm good at. So I think this is going to go well.
Yeah. Well, and I know like you, Chris Revel from Let's Chat with Revel and Friends, I think he passed along your info to me because you are looking to promote, I guess, your album with your band, correct?
Right. Yeah. That's when I originally talked to you. Yes, I was.
Okay. So
now it's a different thing.
So
which is fine. I love to talk about all of it because I think it's very weird. I think all the stuff I do is you know what? However weird you're going to think it is when I tell you about it, it's weirder to me. So.
Well, yeah, because you do a lot and like, you're like, I guess like, if I wasn't such a lazy person, like doing like the things that like, not the music. I'm not a talented person when it comes to that. I can talk a lot, but I'm tone deaf. I can't play anything. So, but like it sounds like you're, working on films and, you're working with some really interesting people in the podcasting landscape.
Yeah.
And you also, I know this was true at 6 months ago, whenever we first started talking, you host a podcast of your own, correct?
Yeah, our 10-year anniversary is in January.
Holy crap. Yeah. You know what? First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And secondly, I'm about 11 and a half years into the podcasting game myself. This show is only about to approach its 3rd year. But so is that the same show for 10 years straight?
Yeah. I mean, we started it in January of 2009. And it's a really funny thing. It all kind of ties in. I don't know if you want to jump in yet, but I'm happy to jump in if you are.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
So the real quick background of the podcast is just that I started a band in 2004-ish called Senior Discount. That's my band. We're a punk band. And super influenced by mainstream punk rock like Blink-182 and Green Day.
Oh, awesome.
And also NoFX, Rancid, and also for people who are actual punk rock fans and are calling me a sellout because I said Blink-182 and Green Day. I also love like Against Me and Leftover Crack and the Suicide Machines, and I have a huge history with punk rock, and it's what I love, and it's kind of what I've always gravitated towards. And so we started this band, Senior Discount, in 2004, and it's weird because as a person who's chasing the creative arts, you kind of have to make decisions sometimes that are like, oh, am I going to go into this all the way? Am I going to like make a backup plan? What am I going to do? Whatever it is. And I always wanted to kind of be safe. So, and the rest of my bandmates want to do the same thing. So we all went to college. And even though we had this band, we were like, well, we got to go to college. So we were kind of grounded as a band, and we had to kind of stay around New England. Our band is based in Providence, Rhode Island. And that meant that, we're going to be playing around Providence, Boston, Connecticut, whatever, places around that area. And, you can't play all the time. Like there are bands that are from a specific area and they just play the same fucking area all the time. And they just continually, you can catch them anytime. And what happens is, I think it becomes like not important to see them for anybody. And I wanted to, we wanted to avoid that. So we didn't want to be playing every couple of weeks in the same area or whatever. And one of the things we kind of faced was like, well, how are we going to keep people interested if we're not touring really? We're staying in New England and different areas around there. And we came up with the solution of doing these videos. And this is kind of, this is the genesis of my film stuff too. I was going to school for film just because I liked film. I was always a big fan of Kevin Smith, like you just said. And at first I was like, let's make these short videos just for fun for the band, to promote our shows, to promote our albums or whatever. And now that sounds very normal for a band to just do like some funny videos here and there. But this was in 2004, so YouTube wasn't even a big
was
thing.
YouTube even a thing? I
Yeah,
feel like
right.
YouTube's
Weird, right?
birth was in 06.
I think YouTube, yeah, well, YouTube was probably like established as a company, but you know, it was probably one millionth as big in 2004. If
And you know, it might have been 2006, maybe when Google acquired it, because I don't think YouTube is an original Google thing, much like all of Google's things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, right. Yeah. So it was kind of weird. And we were making these videos and hosting them on our own server and crashing our server when people watched them and stuff like that. And what happened was, over the years, we started with these very small videos that were like kind of short sketch things, like 5 minutes here and there. And they grew. We started doing prank videos, and prank videos that I'm very proud of. And they actually took a lot more production, you know, over the course of a few years. And we started doing videos with storylines. Some of our videos were like sitcom episodes, and they were 25 minutes long with multiple storylines and a lot of diversity and location stuff. And they got harder to do. So we would do them, which was fine. You know, that's kind of the progression of art. That's exactly what it is that you do stuff more and more and more. It gets better, and it takes more time, and it takes more effort, and it takes more energy to do better projects. That's fine. But what happened was, after a while, I wanted to, like, you know, kind of do stuff that was easy and consistent. And I was building my, you know, Senior Discount's new website at the time. And it was, you know, around like late 2008, let's say. And me and my buddy Brad, who he's an improv guy. He trained in Chicago, and we do the podcast we do is called the Chuck and Brad Podcast. He was part of the videos that we did with Senior Discount. And I said, man, I'm building this new website. If we start podcasts and we, you know, record the podcast once a week and put it up, that's a reason for people to come back to our website and see what we're doing. Or if they're just listening to the podcast through some aggregator, like, you know, iTunes or whatever, then we can plug our shows at the beginning of the podcast every week, and people will be able to hear about what we're doing, you know? And so the band was the genesis of the podcast. We started it, said, hey, like, you know, we're smart guys. We both care about pop culture. We care about movies and music and games and books and stuff. And we have our own projects. I'm in the band. He's in an improv group. We do filmmaking together, and we know tons of comedians and musicians and artists. And so that was the genesis of the podcast, was just to have a place for fans of the band and fans of the improv group, of his improv group, to come and listen to like what we're doing and see what's going on. And so we started in 2009 just for that reason, just for the band's new website. And since then, everything is kind of spider-webbed out its own crazy directions, but that is where the podcast started.
And have you done, as far as like hosting any other podcast, or has it been solely, what's name of your podcast again?
The name of my podcast is the Chuck and Brad Podcast. I know that sounds lazy, but it was originally called Agreeing to Disagree, the Chuck and Brad Podcast, because our gimmick is kind of that we're very different. Yes. And then no one ever said that part. And they would say the Chuck and Brad Podcast, the Chuck and Brad Podcast, Chuck and Brad, Chuck and Brad. And even like, you know, we had people on the podcast and they'd never get the name right. They'd say the Agree to Disagree Podcast, whatever. And we were like, let's just drop Agreeing to Disagree. We're Chuck and Brad doing, you know, the Chuck and Brad Podcast. Let's just be happy with that. That's fine. So, well, yeah.
That actually, I think, like, shows almost how early on, you know, it proves like the legitimacy of how old your podcast is, because like that's something that I don't think you can get away with in 2018 going into 2019, is just simply naming it, like, you know, unless you're a celebrity of some sort, or you know, it's hard to just get away with naming it after yourself.
You might be right when it comes to podcasts. It's funny because I actually feel somewhat differently in terms of other types of media. Like, I actually am frustrated with the fact that it seems like no movies have interesting names anymore. It's all about marketing. So movies will be like, they have to have a name where if you see it on a screen and the screen is black and the movie title is just in white and you don't know what it is, that you remember what the movie's about. And I think that movies actually fail sometimes when they have names that are not indicative enough. So like you'd see like a movie like Knocked Up.
Okay.
Like you would be like, okay, I know what that is. I remember the trailer for that. But think about like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like there's something a little bit more ambiguous about that. These titles, these movie titles, and it's changed. So I think that everything now is actually simplified. So you get exactly what you're getting. So to me, like the Chuck and Brad podcast annoyingly fits into that trend that I don't really like. But I think for us, it just made sense because what happened was, you know, I was in the band and Brad was in the improv group, and we already did the videos together. Then we did the podcast together. And then we like continued to do, we do like hosting things. Like we were just at RI Comic-Con and we moderated panels for different celebrities and stuff like that. You know, we would do like judging things at like food events and stuff like that. And so it became Chuck and Brad. That's who we were as people, and that's who people knew us as. So it just made sense to just be like Chuck and Brad podcast. Well, let's drop this agreeing to disagree stuff, you know. But yeah, it's fun.
And like I said, I feel like that, and I guess specifically in the world of podcasting, that something that's that simple. I don't think it works in 2018. I think you can still have a simple a podcast title and that makes sense and isn't too flashy and isn't just like so crazy out of the world. It doesn't even describe the podcast, but I think it has to have a name. Like it can't, like it's not like this can be, even though Everything Is Awesome is basically just the Kevin Gallagher show. I don't know that I can get away with saying, let's call this the Kevin Gallagher show in 2018, because it's unless, again, because I don't have the name recognition, you know, whereas something like Everything Is Awesome it tells you what my show is about.
Right.
I just talked to, well, I guess it doesn't, but
I was going to say, I mean, from the name, what I would imagine your show is about is that you like a lot of pop culture things and you're happy to push them, and you're all different types of new media in some way. And that could be artists, it could be independent artists or whatever.
Yeah, you know? and that's what I like. The way I this show came about was like, oh, you know, I am tired of trying to find someone to host a podcast with, because it's hard. And I mean, you've been doing it for 10 years with the same co-host. So the fact that you guys can do that, and I'm sure in 10 years your schedules have not always been in sync, and you fluctuated maybe the consistency of what your schedule is, or maybe not. Maybe you guys are just way way good at your jobs.
It's been sort of difficult. It's weird because like I don't know. I haven't gone into it that much with you yet, but basically like the amount of creative stuff that I do is really strange.
Yeah.
And so we have a little bit of a step up on that kind of stuff because I've been like so dedicated to like living a creative life where like that's what I spend my time doing. But yeah, I mean, it's also hard because like, you know, if you put me and Brad and you tried to see if we were on some sort of, I don't know, like some sort of spectrum, we're both like pretty insanely overly organized, over planners and stuff like that. So the fact that we got together, we're kind of lucky that we found each other, because we're actually like if I read you my schedule from now until our live Christmas comedy show, you'd probably be like astounded and disgusted at how filled up every single day is. Where it's like 1:30 p.m. I go to his job for 3 hours. Like 5 p.m. we go to a photo shoot for this thing. Like 8 p.m. we podcasted this. Like this day I have band practice. This day I have to work on film stuff. This day this. And like I have to do that, and I've gotten used to it. Honestly, from the band, because you know I was in the band for 5 years before we did the podcast. So it kind of taught me that I had to be like that. But I totally know what you're saying.
Yeah. Whereas like even 11 and a half years into it is when podcasting teaches you, in fact, it teaches you to almost hate the medium, I think.
That's funny. I hear you.
because there is so much work involved.
Oh my God, yeah.
Especially when like you don't have, say, like a network behind you supporting you, or just like a team of producers. When it's you and maybe at most one other person, you know, which has been like in my history with podcasting, it's been usually me.
Yeah.
And if I'm lucky, one other person that's
right.
helping me out. But for the last 3 years and change, it's been me. And it's so I think like the podcasting, and this is what whenever I talk to people about podcasting, they're like, you know, I want to get into podcasting. What do you think? I'm like, oh, do it. Like I'm very Kevin Smith in that mindset of like, I think everyone should grab a microphone and just do it. And that's like the first hurdle you get over is just pick up a microphone and do it. And then you'll get, and you'll figure it out from there. Like but then what I also say is like, listen, there's also a really dark side to this. See the underbelly of podcasting is that like you're going to hate all the work that you do and all the money you put into it, because like the return is not anything financial. It's all just pure creative like fulfillment.
Yeah. You want to hear something funny? I don't know if I'm supposed to pull back the curtain this much, but whatever, you know. So, you know, we've had the band for a long time, and we've had the podcast for a while. So we got lucky in that the recording equipment that we had up front was pretty good.
Yes.
So we had these condenser mics. Like basically the way that we record the podcast now is with MXL 990s, and they're awesome. We have desktop stands, and we have a Zoom H6, and that's great for recording up to 6 people at once. And this is going to sound not true, but I promise you it's true. It seems almost impossible to like call someone up and record through a Zoom H6 and have that person be recorded into the Zoom at the same time as you and have them hear your voice from your microphone that you're recording into your Zoom recorder at the same time. But I've actually figured it out absolutely perfectly, and I can do phone calls and whatever with my condenser mic, and they sound amazing. And that amount of equipment has been like fairly cheap, and also we've kind of consistently sought out sponsors, and people have paid to be on our show. So we kind of got lucky in terms of we haven't been making money podcasting, but we really haven't had to spend much money that we didn't have. That never really became a thing for us. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do. I'm sure that's difficult. I mean, you know what I mean? Like honestly, to be completely honest, I'll put it this way. I put Brad, my podcast partner, in charge of the sponsorships for right now. And we just don't have any sponsorships because I think he tried a little bit. He probably didn't realize how much work it actually was to get people and to like really get on top of it and do it. And so I'm going to have to take the reins on that again because he was not able to do it for whatever reason. But I think that the amount of tenacity you have to have for that stuff is probably outside of most people's comfort zones. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's the whole, like, you know, if you want to like grow your listenership so that you can get those sponsors, that's a whole nother skill set that, you know, I don't like, I'm not a great marketer. Like I should be using my show's Twitter and social media more than I do, but I just use I kind of am more like, you know, what it sounds like you guys are, like you're Chuck and Brad and like Kevin Smith is Kevin Smith and he does all these other side projects. That's kind of how the wrong way to do it, I think, for me at least. I think it's right for obviously Kevin Smith and it's right, you know, for you guys, especially since you've branded your show that way. But it's wrong for me. I know this, but ultimately it's easier for me because I do other projects for me to do everything from one social media account. But I know that's wrong. And I know that there's better ways to do it, but I just am not a great marketer. And that's always been my weak point. And that's something I know going into this and whatnot.
When you say one social media account, do you mean like one Twitter and one Facebook and one Instagram? Or do you mean like one thing?
No.
One of each?
Yeah, and I have multiples of each for all the different shows that I've ever done or currently do or I'm somehow part of.
But it's just started to stay on top of saying, hey, everybody like this. Hey, everybody like this. Blah, 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 blah.
Save for the automated stuff that gets pushed out there from website posts and stuff. Usually the show Twitters don't get used, whereas my personal Twitter, that gets used to be like, hey, we're throwing this festival, or hey, we're part of this festival, or hey, we're going to this Comic-Con. And that's where I do all of that, which is but that's also where I have my biggest following, because that's where I put all my work into.
Sure.
But I think that there's probably more success found for, if I was going to tell someone to start a podcast, or if someone was asking me for advice for starting a podcast, I was like, start a Twitter for your show and concentrate on that, because that's you want your brands to match up. It might, at least that's what I think I've learned from like the few marketing people I've talked to, but that there's just so much work that goes into it. And for me, it's this, I'm kind of in the same boat where like the biggest cost I have after 10 plus years of doing this, 11 plus years of doing this is hosting now, because I've bought all my equipment in little pieces here and there. And I can't wait to talk to you when we're done recording about how you get a easy setup with that phone call through the Zoom.
Dude. Yeah. It was without like going into it, just cause for boring reasons, basically, every guide you look at online will tell you that you have to do it with basically two audio sources, one from one from your mouth going to them and one from your mouth going into the recorder. But what you have to do is, you have to mute your track going back into the recorder, and then I'll explain it afterwards, because it's too technical to be fun on the podcast.
We because I've done one, and I didn't use the 2 mic setup. I forget what crazy thing I did.
You probably talked into your laptop so that it could hear you, and used and then used a good mic at the same time.
That or I went through my computer and my mixer and my Zoom. Like it was, I had some sort of crazy setup because it was like a last minute thing. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do it this way now. And to be honest,
hellish.
And that was my problem. Like what we're doing right now, 10 years or 11 years ago, when my very first podcast that I did, I was just the host for, and the guy who was the producer and was recording it and mixing it, he did all the technical stuff. And I can only imagine the very first episode we recorded, I was in Maine for work. My co-host was in Levittown, Pennsylvania, where he lived, and my producer was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Damn.
So, and I want to say 11 years ago, if Skype was the thing, again, it wasn't huge.
Yeah, it wasn't big. Yeah. Definitely wasn't as easy to use back then.
No, and I want to say we used, it wasn't Google Hangouts because that wasn't a thing, but I think G-Chat had just started a voice thing.
Yeah.
So we were, and you know what? We may have even used AIM at some point. I think AIM had a voice feature, but whatever, it was some sort of voice chatting thing that we used. And my poor producer had a computer for me to get plugged into the mixer, or a computer for my co-host to be plugged into the mixer, a computer to accept the recordings, a computer to play breaks because we took breaks like big old dummies, a computer to bring in a VoIP phone from Vonage so that we could have call-in guests.
Oh my God.
And that's just off the top of my head. He had 5 computers going, and literally up until very recently, when I had to force myself out of, like, my shed is my studio for the most part. But
damn, where do you live?
I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
So it gets cold.
Yes, it gets super cold. But and because of that, I'm in the process of remodeling my shed so that it's a little bit warmer.
That's cool.
And more studio friendly.
Yeah.
So I'm in my Florida room right now, and because I've moved into an area that's like, now this is also kind of like a storage space at the moment, but it was at one point when I was recording out here, like a used space by family. So, you know, I can't leave it up because my kids are going to run around and knock everything down normally.
Oh, man.
So I had to reduce it from the mixer and the several different, like I still literally 3 years ago, was using multiple computers to record a podcast.
Wow.
And then I you know, luckily found Zencaster and other services like it as backup to kind of reduce the amount of equipment. And like right now, I do have a mixer in front of me, even though I'm using my blue Snowball microphone. I don't know why it's here. I guess it's probably from that last interview I did using my Zoom and whatnot.
Yeah.
But traditionally I've gotten it down to just one computer and one microphone. And then if I have an in-studio guest, it's my mixer, which I think I'm going to be phasing out in favor of the Zoom. But yeah, it is amazing. Like for me, when I think about, and I don't know how, I mean, it sounds like 10 years ago, you guys had a fairly similar, what was your setup 10 years ago to record?
Our setup 10 years ago, this is really interesting. A lot of this stuff was helped out by the fact that I was in a band. So we already had an interface that with our condenser mics to record songs. So we had a recording. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we had a recording interface, and I would have to live mix it. So I'd wear headphones, and I would have like a little mixing board, and I'd live mix this as we go, and it would go out into a microphone port into a laptop and record onto Adobe Audition, and we would. Boost the level at the end, but we really only had one input. So it was, the live mix would have to be really good. Which is fine. I got used to that. That's
and that's something that, traditionally, like if I'm doing an in-studio guest, I still have to do, well, not anymore because I have the Zoom, but I mean, that's only
a little bit, you still a little bit do it.
Yes, because I do have to, especially. So I did press for Keystone Comic-Con out here in Philly earlier this year, and I had to. One of the interviews I did was with Sandy King Carpenter, John Carpenter's wife.
Nice.
And I didn't say anything because like it was John Carpenter's wife, and it's like the queen of horror. So as she's holding the microphone about a foot and a half away from her mouth, I'm like, this is going to be a fun edit, and it did, it wasn't bad. Like I was able to adjust, on the fly to make sure you could hear it just enough so that I could boost it in post, and it didn't. The background, we were lucky enough to be upstairs, where there's no traffic, so it was fine. It actually turned out really good, but I was worried the entire time, like, oh my god, I can't say anything to her because like. It's a big profile guest for me, and like it's going to sound like shit now, but it did not. It was such a fun interview, and it turned out great. So yeah, there is a degree to live mixing with that Zoom still, but certainly not as much as there was, for me as little as 3 years ago, because that Zoom for me is like a very recent addition within the last like 6 months.
For me too. Honestly, I heard so many good things about it.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't really believe that it could do as much as it does.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It seemed a little bit too strange that it could do all that stuff. Like the idea that it can, I have the Zoom H6 with the 2 additional, XLR ports. So, I have 6 inputs. I can mix them all at the same time, and it puts them all out to a multi-track basically.
Yeah.
It's all set. And the amount of stuff that it does is just outrageous. And I just almost didn't understand it. I think I really legitimately didn't think it was possible that it would take care of so many things. So I held off for a long time. And then I reached out to Zoom and I told them about the podcast and the film stuff and all the people we've had on. And they were like, how about this? Like, we'll give you a Zoom for like whatever it was, like 45% off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I realized, I'm like, okay, well, our current board costs more than that. So worst case scenario is we buy this Zoom. If we don't like it, we sell it for more than I bought it for, or we like it and we sell the board that we have.
Yeah.
And so we're going to sell the board. I mean, so long ago we were using like a board with like microphone into our laptops.
Yeah.
And since then we've upgraded to a Scarlett i8 mixer, which is, it's through a USB and it all goes to separate channels on Adobe Audition. But that means that every time I did an interview, we were using a laptop with, Adobe Creative Suite on it, as plus the mixer and then all the XLR microphones.
Yeah.
So the Zoom is a million times better. I mean, we just went up to a lake in New Hampshire with the lead singer of Big D and the Kids Table, because I was playing a show with Big D, and we sat down with the lead singer for 2 hours and sat by his, on his lake house. Just had like an awesome podcast with that thing. And that kind of portability, I don't think would be possible without that.
No, yeah, and that's what I love. Like I'll sit at outside when I'm like, if I'll edit or if I need to like I like to edit outside at my fire pit. If I'm editing at night. And then every now and then I'll have to do some pickups, or I'll have to, if I'm editing another podcast that I just produce, I'll have to record a commercial or something. And even though I should probably be inside and not outside where there's a crackling fire, I'll tell you what, that Zoom does not pick up the crackling fire. It doesn't really pick up much of the outside noise unless there's actual noise. It's crazy. It is.
It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I love that thing. Like, it is and even though I'm not using it right now because it's just not conducive for this interview, it is. I'm getting ready to go to PAX Unplugged here in Philly this weekend, where I'm doing press and recording some actual play podcasts and doing some interviews and stuff. So I'm getting ready to like pack my bag with that, and like I don't have the adapter to have the additional 2 microphones, so I'll only be bringing 4 with me. But I can't wait to get that, because that will, not that I often need more than 4 people anyway.
Me too, same thing.
But I can't wait to get that adapter just to have that option. And I will certainly, as soon as I get that adapter, have a 6-person podcast, because why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I just recorded a podcast with Tell 'em Steve Dave up at Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash, and we needed all 6 of the inputs. So it's, even if that happens, less than 5% of the time, it's really a help to have the option.
So you open it up, how, explain this gig if you can, because Tell 'em Steve Dave is one, maybe the only now I listen to a lot of the podcasts on the Smodcast network, but Tell 'em Steve Dave is the only one that I have consistently listened to from episode 1, and maybe have only fallen behind by like a handful of episodes, and went back to binge to catch up. Whereas like I'll drop in and out of Hollywood Babylon because it's Hollywood news. Like sometimes I'm into it, sometimes I'm not. So Tell 'em Steve Dave, and I think honestly, like aside from Smodcast or maybe even Fat Man Beyond, like I think Tell 'em Steve Dave is one. Maybe it's because those guys are like, they're just us. They're regular dudes. Even though Kev and everyone else can seem like regular dudes too. At the end of the day, like, he's off in Hollywood making movies. These guys are at least Walt is working a comic book store. So and not to, I don't mean to make that like sound like degrading at all. I think obviously it's not like he's made a career of it. He was on a TV show because of it and whatnot. But Tell 'em Steve Dave is probably, maybe by default my second favorite podcast next to Smodcast, the flagship show. But sometimes I debate that being my favorite show as well. So when I found out, and I don't know if it was Chris that told me from Let's Chat, or if it was just from emails, like you and I going back and forth setting this interview up. But when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I can't comment on this because I need to hear it fresh on the show. Tell me about how you got connected with Tell 'em Steve Dave and like what you do for them.
So, for those of you who don't know, like anyone listening, that Tell 'em Steve Dave is made up of Walt and Brian from AMC's the TV show Comic Book Men, and Brian Quinn from True TV's show Impractical Jokers. But it started before any of those shows existed, So anyone who like listened back then, what you kind of knew those guys from, where you knew Walt and Brian as having like little walk-on roles with like one line in the Kevin Smith movies, the early Kevin Smith movies. Like, Walt was in Clerks, and Brian and Walt were in, Mallrats and Dogma and stuff like that. And their podcast, it's just funny because I love their podcast too, and I know that like I work for them, so it's like you kind of think I have to say that, but like I really love Tell 'em Steve Dave. They were my favorite podcast way before I ever knew them, and it's weird to explain them what draws people to it. I think that they're all so different. And it's like Walt and Brian are just eternally connected because of their relationship and how long it's been, but they are such different people. It's crazy. And I think that Quinn, he just brings like a different level of normal person to the group to really kind of question Brian, question Walt, that kind of stuff. But it's a very bizarre podcast. I think the best podcasts are podcasts where the draw is the personalities of the people saying stuff, as opposed to like I hear, and this is no offense to anyone. Anyone can do their own thing. Everyone does great stuff for people, but like if someone's like, the gimmick of our podcast is someone comes on every week and they talk about a bird they'd like to be and a tree they'd like to, whatever. And I'm like, I don't like podcasts that have too stringent of a gimmick like that. I want podcasts where I want to listen to the people that are hosting the show talk because it feels like I'm friends with them, and it feels like they have funny personalities. They say funny things. And I like hearing about them and their lives from their perspective. And that's what Tell 'em Steve Dave is. Like the purest. If there's a moonshine of podcasting, Tell 'em Steve Dave is the moonshine of just personality drives everything. Even when we do big projects and do different stuff, when we put together, the recent Halloween episode with all the games and the Baron transformations. I don't know if have you seen any of the video work we've done, really, or not really?
I haven't seen the video work that you've recently done.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I'll get into it. So, I'll learn you. But so I loved Tell 'em Steve Dave for a long time. And what happened was, so weird. So I'm in the band. We did a lot of filming with the band, like I said, because I went to film school, started doing the podcast, continued filming comedy stuff. Never got paid for, by the way, just so you know, there's something in my house talking right now. Like, how like in 2018 you have like devices that say stuff.
Yeah.
Like a Google Home or an Amazon thing. Like, I don't think I have one of those things, but something in my house is talking to me right now. I can hear a woman's voice, and she's saying like, the more often you talk to me, the more I'll learn you're something. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'll deal with the paranormal activity after the interview.
That's amazing.
I don't know.
You're getting haunted by technology.
Yeah, I really am. So we were filming a lot of stuff. We always filmed our shows, and we always filmed these scripted videos. And after we did the podcast for a while, we were filming our live episodes. And so we would do a live episode in front of an audience in Providence, in front of like, let's say, 85 people.
Okay.
And I would get 3 camera guys, because I'm on stage, and I'd set them up and we'd film it and then put it together and do something with it. We released Senior Discount, the band released an album, and it was a 2-disc album. The first disc was an album of music, and the second disc was actually a live DVD of our first live podcast, shot from 3 different angles.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. So I saw Tell 'em Steve Dave, they were a podcast I liked to listen to them all the time. And I saw that they were doing a show in like Brooklyn, I think it was, in 2016. And I wrote to Walt, who, he says his email on the podcast once in a while for like, he's like, oh, we need help with this. If you want to email us, blah, blah, blah. I wrote to Walt, who I had never talked to. I have no connection to Kevin Smith. I have no connection to these guys. And I said, hey man, like, I do a lot of film work. I see that you guys are doing a live episode. And if you're a fan of Tell 'em Steve Dave, you know that Walt despises doing live stuff. He doesn't like to do it. He just doesn't like to. That's it. And so they do them so rarely. And I said, you guys do such rare live episodes, like to the point where people like fly in from England to see them.
Yeah.
I said, you do them so rarely that you should really film it. Like, I'll come film it. Like, let me, here's an example of stuff I filmed. Let me come do it. And he wrote back and he said, and this is what I'm sure his canned response to people was or is. He was like, that's very kind of you to offer. Thanks. So that was him saying, that's okay. And I totally understand that, because he's a guy who's doing his show. He has a lot of people who are probably into the show and reaching out and saying, I'd love to be part of the show in this way, in this way, in this way. He doesn't know, who he can really trust to come through with what they're saying, what the quality is going to be like. There's a million reasons for him not to be saddled with a new thing to worry about, where there's a film guy coming and blah, blah, blah. So I got it. I understood. I went to the show. I went to Brooklyn. Rhode Island is about like where I live is about 3.5 hours outside of like Manhattan.
Okay.
And so I went to the show with my girlfriend, and show was really funny. And for some reason, I expected them to have like our own film crew. No one was filming it. I thought that was really weird. And so after I came back, they announced another live show in like, it wasn't Brooklyn. It was like the Bronx or something. And I reached out again and I said, hey man, like I know you weren't interested before, but you guys are doing another show. I noticed you didn't film at all. I figured you'd be filming at least a little bit. I'm happy to come and film this next show. And I think I didn't get an answer from Walt, but I'm pretty tenacious, which has been kind of my calling card in terms of moving forward with the band, moving forward with the podcast, whatever, where I'm not scared to reach out, and I'm not scared to follow up and stay on top of things. And I think it's important. I'd rather be the person that follows up too much or reaches out too much than the person that missed out on any opportunities because I didn't do that. So I decided to look up other emails and try to email people. I emailed Brian. I emailed, whatever emails I could find. I don't remember at this point who it was, but one of the emails I sent was to the Impractical Jokers manager saying the same thing. And basically he took like a long time, but he finally wrote back and he's like, hey, yeah, we're thinking about, we're hiring you. How about this much money? And it was like a very, very small amount of money for the amount of filming that I was going to do, especially because I was going to film it with 3 cameramen and blah, blah. And basically, we didn't get confirmation that we were going to go film it until like a day beforehand or something. And I actually was living temporarily in an apartment because my house had a house fire and I lost all my possessions. Oh. And it's fine. It actually worked out better than if I didn't have the house fire, but that's fine. Well, now I bought an old house for like nothing. That was like fine and fun, and now I own a new beautiful house. So and it's in the same place, and I got to design my own house. I got to design it. Yeah, it was cool.
Oh, that's awesome. All right,
if you can deal with the traumatic experience of seeing your like home and all your belongings burn in front of you, and then deal with 14 months of moving and paperwork and insurance stuff. If you can deal with that stuff, then I say go for it, man. Have the house fire, get the new house. It worked out great. But no, so I had to scramble. I went to Best Buy and I bought $2,500 of film equipment, and I already had like probably $1,500 worth of film equipment. I taught my girlfriend Gina and my buddy Brad, who I do the podcast with, kind of some loose filmmaking stuff, and we drove to the Gramercy in New York City. That's where it was, the Gramercy Theater in New York City. And we set up a 3-camera shoot. Didn't talk to any of the Tell 'em Steve Dave guys beforehand. I didn't see them at all. And we shot this thing without ever communicating with them beforehand. And we turned it, it's a long story, but basically we filmed the whole thing. And it was the highest profile gig I've ever done. I haven't really done like hours long multicam shoots before. That's kind of a big responsibility. I was directing it as well as running a camera, as well as having to react to them on the fly because I had no idea what their plans were, right? I didn't talk to them. Yeah. So I went home. If you know the show well, their audio guy is Declan, who is a great dude. He lives in Ireland. And I was told by the Impractical Jokers manager, he's like, we're going to send the audio files to Declan and we'll get back to you about when we want to, put this out. And I said, okay, that's fine. And 8 months went by when I just had this footage and waiting for the audio for it. So this is going to sound really strange, and I'm sorry to go off in this direction. I was doing a live comedy podcast, and when we do our live podcast, we like to come up with different segments as opposed to just improvisational conversation. Yeah. And we came up with this prank idea on our friend, where we always made fun of this fictional grandmother that we said he had, just in conversation. So what we did was we made fake funeral invitations for his grandmother, and we sent them out to 100 random people across the United States of America with all like really like funny messages to inspire them to right back to us. Like one of them said, like, the woman that supposedly died, the fictional woman, her name was Noni Maxud, and he wrote to someone Hey, people are saying Noni's death is a suicide, and that's what you better fucking say too. And we put an email address on the postcards, the funeral invitations, for people to write back. So the live segment was going to be, we pull our friend up on stage, we reveal these funeral invitations, we read all the funny ones that we sent out, and we read some of the people that wrote back in, how we kind of continued to mess with them a little bit. And I was doing this prank, and I was like, oh, maybe the Tell 'em Steve Dave guys would like this prank. And I sent one over to the Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash in New Jersey, where Tell 'em Steve Dave records. And I get an email back from Walt, and he's like, first of all, genius prank. Second of all, so what's going on with all the footage? And I was like, well, I'm waiting for Declan to send me the audio. And he's like, let me get on that. And they got me the audio, and I took it, and I, for the first time ever, I did this 2-hour live edit, that I directed and shot, and we put out a Blu-ray. And it's the second movie I ever directed. I directed a documentary about my band that was like a full-length movie that we sent out to festivals, and it won a festival for best comedy.
Awesome.
Directed was Tell 'em Steve Dave Live at the Gramercy Theater, which is a Blu-ray that you can buy from tellemstevedave.com. But they had me do that, and Walt was really, really happy with my work on it. He was like, "Hey, we're going to shoot something else. We're going to shoot this game show in the store." And I was wondering if you wanted to edit it. And I'm like, sure. And so they shot the game show, and they sent me all the stuff, and I edited it over a long period of time because it was a really, really, really serious shoot, because it was the documentary crew that shot Comic Book Men for AMC. That's what I was working on. That level of like footage and audio and everything. And I gotta be like, when I want to put this into perspective, like everything I've ever done for film work has been for myself, run by myself, conceptualized by myself, directed by myself, written by me and my buddies, and filmed by me and my friends. And so all of a sudden I'm kind of being thrust into this world of very professional filmmaking. And I really wanted to impress the guys. I really wanted them to have a good project and have a good impression of me. And I really wanted to do good work. And so I spent a ton of time on it. And Walt basically is my main contact. That's the person I talked to the most. And he loved all the stuff that we did. And he's like, oh, I had this other idea for this fake movie trailer for the character Baron von Flanagan. But we ran out of money for this project. And I was like, I'll come to New Jersey and I'll film it. I'm like, we'll just figure it out. He's like, you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And so I went to the stash, and it's funny because I'm a fan of these guys for a long time, but I went there, met all the guys, and we shot one day, and we shot all this stuff for this fake trailer, Baron von, Scream. It's called Scream, Baron, Scream, and it's about Baron von Flanagan. Yeah. And Walt's idea was he had this 1950s monster movie, and he wanted me to take all these clips from it and use them and kind of integrate this new footage we put into it like it was all filmed together. And it came out really good. And I feel like Elephants in the Room is awesome. That's the name of the game show. We released that as a Blu-ray as well. But I feel like Scream, Baron, Scream, the little 5-minute trailer that we did, like really stole the show, and Walt really loved it, and everyone was really happy with it. And unbeknownst to me, earlier this summer, Comic Book Men was not getting picked up again by AMC. And I think that started this idea that Tell 'em Steve Dave was going to do a Patreon account. And for people who don't know what a Patreon account is, it's basically any creator, be it filmmaker, podcast, or whatever, can have this. You can go to Patreon and say, hey, I'm going to do, an extra podcast every week for anyone who signs up at a $10 level for my Patreon, where you pay me $10 a month to get all my podcasts. And for people at a $15 a month can do this. And so they did that to do new film projects, to do new podcast projects. And they asked me if I wanted to do all the video stuff for it after I had done these couple projects. And so that started in July. And it's basically like my main job now is just working on these projects with the guys all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy. I went on Tell 'em Steve Dave. I'm on episode, I don't know what episode number it is. I'd be lying if I said one right now. But I went on the Tell 'em Steve Dave and kind of talked a little bit. It's funny, we've never talked about kind of the genesis of me working with them. But I went on earlier this summer and and we also kind of have been doing. Yeah, that's right. I went on because Quinn was doing the Impractical Jokers movie, and so they were looking to have like different people that are involved in it.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, that's right. I remember now.
I remember that episode now. As you're saying this, I remember your voice.
Mm-hmm. I told my story where I got arrested for my public enema.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
That was my first movie. We filmed that enema for my first movie. I have it. I'm happy to send you the DVD.
Oh my God! Yes. I can't. Oh God! Now I'm getting star flustered here.
Oh man, that's fun.
It's and you know what? It's because I listen to all my podcasts on 1.5 times speed because I listen to a lot of podcasts. Wow,
Jesus. So, I see that setting in apps, and I'm like, who is the monster that needs to listen to podcasts at 150% of the speed? It's like you're skipping the enjoyment just to get the information of whatever it's gonna,
But see, here's the thing. Like, to me, that's normal now. Yeah. So like, I'm real tight with a lot of Philly podcasters, and I listen to a good amount of Philly podcasting shows. So I'll listen to the shows, and often around the same time, I'll talk to them in real life. And it's weird because I'm so used to their normal voice to me being 1.5 times really the normal speed. So that's really funny. So, but it is now 2 times. Like, anyone that listens to a podcast at 2 times the speed, they're not actually listening to, you can't understand it. You're a monster if you listen to it 2 times. 1.5, you get used. In fact, when I listen, I'll every now and then go back and listen to an episode of something and put it on 1 time speed, and it just sounds like it's slowed down. Yeah. And it sounds like I can't explain. It sounds like everyone's really, drunk really doing a podcast. That's how slow it's. So I have kind of ruined the ability to listen to a podcast at a normal speed. But I can't go to 2 times. Right. That is too quick. 1.5, I recommend it. You recommend House Fires. I recommend 1.5 speeds. Oh my God. I can't, that is such an awesome, I don't know necessarily if it's a dream come true, but it's such an awesome, unexpected dream job to kind of land.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little scary because, it's weird because I told this story in so many weird segments, but really my deal overall is I started the band in 2004. I went to school for film, not because I thought it was going to lead to
All right, thank you, Chuck, for being on the show. Apologies for all the delays in getting this out. The most recent delays was trying to figure out how to get the rest of Chuck's audio in and whatnot. I also want to apologize for the sound quality that may be happening in this pre-intro and, I guess it's post-intro, post-outro that we record here. I left my XLR mics in all my containers for the festival that we cleaned up. So I have my Zoom with me, and I have to use the attachment, the MS attachment, I believe it's called, for recording instead of a traditional XLR microphone. And I don't even have my headphones to really kind of monitor the levels here. So I apologize for that. And if you did come out to the festival, we're going to get more into the festival in a different show in a couple weeks here, probably the end of the month of February here. But thank you. If you came out to the festival, thank you for supporting the festival. If you came out to see Everything Is Awesome live, thank you for coming out and supporting that. If you donated to the HEADstrong Foundation, whether it was through our URL or was it through them directly, however you did it, thank you so much at the festival. Not only did we raise more cash in hand at this year's festival than any other festival prior, we met and exceeded our $500 goal. We raised $781 for the HEADstrong Festival. And because we beat that $500 goal before the actual start of the festival, we're in the process of planning our March live event, which is going to be, I keep calling it hack, but I don't know if I'm necessarily hacking. I'm just writing another module for Jeff Stormer's Mission Accomplished game. It's going to be a holiday themed module, and I'm hacking, I guess, some verbiage, but the mechanics are more or less going to be the same, I think. So stay tuned for more details in that and whatnot. Other things that have that we're changing, that we're going to be announcing, is our Patreon. Where I said that we were going to make some changes, and because we made changes to the way that I operate the podcast network here, where I'm not really going to be doing much editing anymore, at least for free. We are still publishing things for free, of course. That's the point of the podcast network. If I can offer a platform for someone's voice, great, I will do that. We just need edited files, and that's how the network will continue to grow in the future here. And we're going to get back to growing the network this year. But the first thing we need to do is kind of reshape how branding, really, and how we brand everything as awesome, and that's entertainment and whatnot. And going into 12 years of podcasting now, I've always tried to brand the individual things and market these individual things, which is important. I want to do that, but I think the best way for me to do that is as Kevin Gallagher. So we're going to be shifting our Patreon around. It's only going to affect one person right now, but I hope it brings more people in, because we're going to be doing things more based off me as an entertainer, a performer, and a content creator, which means I think it's going to give more content to you guys, because I no longer have to wait for other people to get me things or edit those things. I get to share things that are me and my stuff, and I have all the control in the world of that. So I want to announce that a little bit more formally during our live episode in the mid roll for that, or in the pre-intro or the post-outro or whatever. We're going to that's where we're going to explore that stuff. But just be on the lookout for an update for our Patreon and other ways to support me, which in turn supports this show and supports the greater thing that we're trying to do, which is just get unique content out there that I do and whatnot. So again, make sure you check out Chuck Staton on, you can hear him on Tell 'em Steve Dave quite frequently. You can go to @discountchuck on Twitter. You can go to chuckandbradpodcast.com, and that's his central hub to get everything that he's working on, including his band at Senior Discount and everything else that he does. So check that out, chuckandbradpodcast.com, @discountchuck on the Twitter. I don't necessarily have a call of action this week, so when you get to that portion of the show, you're just going to hear the generic message about content, using 5calls.org to contact your representatives. Go download the app. You'll see, issues that might be important to you, and that's how you can get involved with your community and making sure you have a say in how your community is run, or even this country is run and whatnot. Make sure you find this podcast on Twitter at Real Awesome Pod. It's at Real Awesome Pod on Facebook.com as well. On Instagram, we're at Awesome Podcast. I'm going to try to get more involved with that as well. You can follow me on Twitter at That Nerdy Kev. That's where I do most of my talking about everything I do, including Everything Is Awesome. So make sure you follow me there if you want to get involved with the community more. Stay tuned for more details about, we're launching a Discord server that's going to help grow our community in a more intimate way, I think. That's going to launch along with our new Patreon that we're going to be kicking off, as well as other great ways that you can help support me, which in turn supports everything else that I work on. I'm not going to keep you here much longer, but stay tuned. On Wednesday afternoon, we'll be dropping episodes 150, baby. That's right, 150, and actually 151. We are going to launch because they go hand in hand. 150 is where I sit down at PAX Unplugged and play Star-Crossed with Ben from Pot of Love and the All Ports Open podcast network here in Philadelphia. It's a great, great game that we play of the Starcross game that was designed and created by one Alex Roberts, who I sat down and interviewed for episode 151. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be dropping later this week. And then episode 152, if not 153, but at least 152 will drop on Friday. Thank you for listening to the show. You can be doing anything with your time, and you're choosing to spend it with me and my guest this week. So thank you so much. And stay tuned for on my Twitter at @ThatNerdyKev for whatever else we're dropping this week to help us get the network caught up, including the After Party One podcast, the Ladies Who Rants, Bullies Keep Out, Victims and Villains, and the Zomcast. On top of everything is awesome. But until next time, guys, we'll catch you right here on all the things that we do on awesomepodcast.com and thatentertains.com/network. We like to end Everything is Awesome with a call to action. Super friends, there are a lot of terrible things happening right now. It can feel like you can't do anything to help, but you can. It takes people like us to make a difference. One of the easiest and most effective ways to action is to call your representatives about issues that are important to you. When I call my reps, I use a site called 5calls.org. That's the number 5calls.org. There, you'll find issue summaries for issues that are important to you, contact information for your representatives, and a script to read while you're on the phone to make sure your message gets across. Calling is quick, easy, and is one of the most effective ways to have your voice heard. Thank you to all of our supporters on patreon.com/thatentertains. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to bring this episode to you. If you want to support us in a non-monetary way, word-of-mouth recommendations and 5-star rating reviews on iTunes are the best way to spread the good word of awesome. You can find us on Facebook.com and Twitter @RealAwesomePod or @AwesomePodcast on Instagram. And we're available on awesomepodcast.com and thatentertains.com/network. Get news about Everything is Awesome from our website, social media accounts, and also on my personal Twitter @ThatNerdyKev. If you're interested in ad rates, live appearances, help with your podcast, or have a question or comment, email us at awesome@crudeHumorstudios.com. Everything is Awesome is a production of That's Entertainment Podcast Network in association with Crude Humor Studios. Crude Humor Studios is a Philadelphia-based production company specializing in audio, video, and live performances. You can find more info at crudehumorstudios.com. Thanks for listening, super friends. We've been awesome.
That's Entertainment Podcast Network. Entertainment and culture. Artist-owned, fan-supported.